The September sun cast long shadows across the playground of Little Sprouts Daycare as Marie Pearson pulled her car into the parking lot, 15 minutes late for pickup. The 32-year-old single mother had called ahead. An emergency patient at the dental office, where she worked as a hygienist, had required an extraction that couldn't wait. Cassidy's teacher, Miss Jenna, had assured her it was no problem. They'd keep the 3-year-old occupied until she arrived. Marie rushed through the brightly painted front door, past the construction paper apples and fall leaves decorating the walls. The main playroom was empty, chairs stacked on tables for the evening cleaning. She heard voices from the back playground and made her way through the building. "I'm so sorry," she called as she pushed open the heavy metal door that led to the outdoor play area. Mr. Peterson's molar was hanging by a thread, and Her words died in her throat. Miss Jenna stood in the middle of the playground, her face ashen. 2 police officers were already on scene, one speaking into his radio while the other examined the fence line. 3 other teachers huddled together near the slide, one openly sobbing. "Where's Cassidy?" Marie asked, her voice barely audible. Miss Jenna took a step toward her, hands trembling. "Marie, I don't know how to tell you this. We can't find her. We've searched everywhere. She was just here, playing with her blanket by the sandbox. And then she was gone." The world tilted beneath Marie's feet. "What do you mean, gone? She's 3 years old. She can't just be gone." Officer Dawson, a heavy-set man with kind eyes that had already seen too much in his 20 years on the force, approached cautiously. "Ms. Pearson, I'm sorry to meet under these circumstances. We're doing everything we can to locate your daughter. Can you tell me what she was wearing today?" Marie's mind went blank for a terrifying moment before the morning rushed back. A pink T-shirt with butterflies, denim overalls, white sneakers with Velcro straps, and she had her blanket. She takes it everywhere. It's white with purple stars. My mother made it for her before she died. The officer nodded, jotting down notes. "What's your hair color?" "Eye color?" "Blonde, curly, down to her shoulders, and her eyes are blue, bright blue, like her father's." Marie's voice cracked. How could this happen? Isn't this place supposed to be secure? Miss Jenna was crying now. "The gate was locked, Marie. I swear it was locked. We checked it twice during outside time, like we always do. I turned around for 1 minute to help Tyler with the water fountain, and when I looked back, she just wasn't there anymore." Marie pushed past them both, running to the sandbox where her daughter had last been seen. Cassidy's yellow plastic shovel lay abandoned in the sand, a half-formed castle crumbling beside it. But no blanket, no Cassidy. "The fence," Marie said, racing toward the perimeter of the playground. "Did someone check the fence?" "We're examining it now, ma'am," the second officer said, crouched near a section of chain link. "There appears to be a small gap here where the fence meets the gatepost. It's possible a child could squeeze through, but she wouldn't have gone far on her own." Marie's world collapsed into a pinpoint of fear as his meaning became clear. If Cassidy hadn't wandered off on her own, then someone had taken her. Someone had stolen her baby girl right from under the watchful eyes of her caregivers. "We need to expand the search," Officer Dawson said, already on his radio again. "Get K-9 units down here, set up a perimeter, and Ms. Pearson will need a recent photo of your daughter." Marie fumbled with her phone, tears blurring her vision as she pulled up a picture she'd taken just that morning. Cassidy grinning widely, proudly showing off her outfit for school, that beloved blanket clutched in one hand. As she stared at her daughter's smiling face, a primal scream built in her chest, one that would echo through the quiet town of Millfield for years to come. The search for Cassidy Pearson had begun. 7 years passed with agonizing slowness for Marie Pearson. 7 years of false leads and dead ends. 7 years of age progression photos showing how Cassidy might look at 4, at 6, at 8, at 10. 7 years of candlelight vigils and missing posters gradually weathered by sun and rain until they were gently taken down, replaced by fresh ones that fewer and fewer people noticed. Marie had never left Millfield, despite the pitying glances that followed her everywhere. She couldn't leave. What if Cassidy somehow found her way home and her mother wasn't waiting? What if a vital clue emerged and she wasn't there to follow it? So she stayed, eventually leaving the dental practice to open her own small bakery downtown, where she could set her own hours and always be available for the occasional update from Detective Dawson, now nearing retirement but still obsessed with the case that had haunted his career. On this crisp autumn morning, exactly 7 years after Cassidy's disappearance, Marie sat in her usual spot behind the counter of Sweetness Bakery, mechanically frosting cupcakes for a birthday order. She didn't notice when the bell above the door chimed, didn't look up until a shadow fell across her workspace. Marie. She recognized the voice immediately, Detective Dawson, but the urgency in his tone made her drop her piping bag. His partner, Detective Lisa Haas, stood slightly behind him, her face unreadable. "What is it?" Marie asked, her hands already trembling. "Did you find her? Is she—" She couldn't finish the question, the one that had haunted her for 7 years. "Is she alive?" "We've found something," Dawson said carefully. "Not Cassidy, but something that belonged to her?" Marie gripped the edge of the counter. "The blanket," she whispered. Somehow she knew. That blanket had been Cassidy's most treasured possession, her security object, the thing she would never willingly leave behind. Dawson nodded, his weathered face showing a mix of hope and caution. "Yes, the blanket. A homeowner found it in his attic while doing renovations. White with purple stars, just as you described. We've confirmed the fabric patterns match photos from your home." "Where?" Marie demanded, already reaching for her coat. "Where was it found? Who had it?" "The Reynolds house on Oakwood Drive," Detective Haas answered. "Daniel Reynolds was renovating his attic when he found it tucked behind some insulation." Marie's mind raced. "Reynolds? I don't know any Reynolds. Are they new to town?" "Daniel moved here about 5 years ago," Dawson explained. "Bought the house from the previous owner, Harold Meacham. Meacham moved to Florida shortly after Cassidy disappeared." Marie remembered Harold Meacham, a quiet, middle-aged man who occasionally came into the dental office for cleanings. He'd always been polite, unremarkable. "And you think Meacham might have had something to do with Cassidy's disappearance? That doesn't make sense. He was just a normal guy, an accountant or something." "Financial planner," Haas corrected, "and we don't know anything for certain yet. That's why we're heading over there now, to interview Reynolds more thoroughly, go through the house with a forensics team. We wanted to tell you first, and we thought you might want to see the blanket." Marie nodded mutely, grabbing her purse. "Jess?" she called to her assistant, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop from the kitchen. "Can you handle things for a few hours?" "Of course," Jessica replied, her eyes wide. "Go. Call me if you need anything." The drive to Oakwood Drive took less than 10 minutes, but to Marie it felt like crossing an ocean. She sat rigid in the back seat of the police cruiser, watching familiar streets pass by, the town where her daughter should have grown up. They pulled up in front of a modest 2-story colonial with fresh paint and neatly trimmed hedges. A young man with dark hair stood on the porch, talking to another officer. He looked up as they approached, his expression somber. "Ms. Pearson," he said, stepping forward to meet her. "I'm Daniel Reynolds. I'm so sorry about your daughter. I found the blanket this morning when I was adding insulation. It was stuffed behind the old batting, near the chimney." Marie barely heard him, her eyes fixed on the evidence bag Detective Haas was carefully removing from her car. Inside was the blanket, its once bright white fabric now yellowed with age, the purple stars faded, but still visible. Marie's mother had hand-stitched those stars, had embroidered Cassidy's initials in the corner. "That's it," she whispered, reaching out before pulling her hand back, knowing she couldn't contaminate the evidence. "That's Cassidy's blanket. Dawson nodded to the officer standing guard. "Let's go inside, talk through the timeline." Daniel Reynolds led them into a living room that had been partially torn apart for renovations. Drop cloths covered furniture, and tools were scattered across the floor. "I bought this place 5 years ago from Harold Meacham," Reynolds explained, clearing space for them to sit. "It needed a lot of work, but the location was perfect and the price was right. I've been renovating room by room as I can afford it. The attic was next on my list." "And you found the blanket this morning?" Detective Haas asked, taking out her notebook. Reynolds nodded. "Yes, around 9 a.m. I was pulling out the old insulation to replace it with something more energy efficient. It was stuffed way back in a corner, behind the chimney stack. I almost missed it. When I pulled it out and saw what it was, well, everyone in town knows about Cassidy. I called the police immediately." "Have you found anything else unusual during your renovations?" Dawson asked. "Anything at all that seemed out of place?" Reynolds hesitated. "Not really, though there was one thing. In the basement, I found a section of wall that had been patched and painted over. Looked newer than the rest. I assumed Meacham had done some repair work before selling, maybe fixed a crack or something. I haven't gotten around to renovating down there yet." Dawson and Haas exchanged glances. "We'd like to see that now," Dawson said, his voice carefully controlled. Reynolds led them down a narrow staircase to a finished basement. The space was divided into 2 rooms, a small den with an old TV and sofa, and a larger storage area. He pointed to the far wall of the storage room. "There. See how the paint is slightly different? And the texture of the wall doesn't quite match." Dawson ran his hand over the surface, his expression grim. "We're going to need to open this up. Mr. Reynolds, if you could wait upstairs with Officer Peterson, forensics will be here shortly." After Reynolds left, Marie stared at the wall, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You think she might be behind there?" Haas placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We don't know anything yet, Marie. Let's not jump to conclusions. This could be exactly what Reynolds suggested, just a repair job." But Marie could see in their eyes what they were thinking. 7 years of police work had taught them to expect the worst. 7 years of motherhood without her daughter had taught Marie the same. Within 30 minutes, the house was swarming with forensics technicians in white Tyvek suits. One of them carefully examined the wall with ground-penetrating radar, frowning at the readout. "There's definitely something behind here," he said, "a hollow space that shouldn't be there." Marie watched, frozen, as they began to carefully cut through the drywall, removing it in sections. The room fell silent as the first piece came away, revealing a small space between the basement wall and the house's foundation, a hidden alcove about 4 feet wide and 6 feet deep. But it was empty. "There's nothing here," Haas said, shining her flashlight into the space. "Just wait." She crouched down, examining the concrete floor. "There are marks here, scratch marks." Marie pushed forward, needing to see for herself. The beam of Haas's flashlight illuminated the floor of the hidden space where faint lines had been etched into the concrete. As Marie's eyes adjusted, she could make out letters, crudely scratched, but readable. Cassidy. Her daughter's name, carved into the concrete. The search of Harold Meacham's former home stretched into the night. Each piece of evidence recovered from the hidden room painted a horrifying picture. A child-sized mattress, now moldy with age. A plastic cup with faded princess decorations. A small box containing locks of blonde hair tied with different colored ribbons, each labeled with dates spanning nearly 2 years. And most damning of all, a journal hidden inside the wall cavity, its pages filled with meticulous entries detailing Meacham's obsession with the little girl who had attended Little Sprouts Daycare, where his sister, Jenna Meacham, had worked as a teacher. Miss Jenna? The teacher who had been watching Cassidy the day she disappeared. The teacher who had sworn the gate was locked. The teacher who had been the last to see her. How could we have missed this? Dawson muttered, flipping through the journal pages that had been carefully photographed and placed in evidence sleeves. Meacham had no record, no history of violence. Everyone described him as quiet, responsible. And Jenna, she was devastated when Cassidy disappeared. She quit teaching afterward, moved away to take care of their elderly mother in Arizona. "People lie," Haas said grimly, "and some are very good at it. The question now is, where is Cassidy, and is she still alive?" Marie sat nearby, clutching a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The detectives had tried to convince her to go home, but she'd refused. This was the first real lead in 7 years. She wasn't going anywhere. According to the journal, Haas continued, Meacham kept Cassidy in that hidden room for at least 20 months. The entries stop abruptly in May 2018. That's when he sold the house and moved to Florida. "And took Cassidy with him?" Marie asked, her voice hollow. "Is that what you think happened?" Dawson and Haas exchanged glances. "It's possible," Dawson said carefully. "But if that's the case, why leave the blanket behind? And why leave the journal, which is essentially a confession?" "Maybe he thought no one would ever find it," Haas suggested. "The room was well hidden. If Reynolds hadn't decided to renovate—" "We need to find Meacham," Dawson said, pulling out his phone. "I've got contacts in the Florida State Police. We'll start there." He stepped away to make the call, leaving Marie alone with Detective Haas. "I need to know," Marie said, her hands shaking around the coffee cup. "What did he write in the journal? About Cassidy? Did he hurt her?" Haas hesitated. "Marie, it's evidence in an ongoing investigation. I can't—" "She's my daughter," Marie snapped, her voice sharp with 7 years of pain. "I need to know what happened to her. I've spent every day for 7 years imagining the worst. How could the truth be any more painful than what I've already imagined?" After a long moment, Haas nodded. "The journal indicates that Meacham became obsessed with Cassidy shortly after she started at Little Sprouts. His sister Jenna would talk about the children in her class, and something about Cassidy caught his attention. He would visit the daycare sometimes, bringing Jenna lunch, watching the children play. He writes about Cassidy's blanket specifically, how she carried it everywhere, how it made her feel safe." Marie closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "Go on." According to the journal, Jenna helped him take Cassidy. She created a distraction with the water fountain, and Meacham, who was supposedly dropping off Jenna's forgotten lunch, slipped into the playground and coaxed Cassidy through the gap in the fence with her blanket. He had a car waiting in the alley behind the daycare. "And she helped him?" Marie's voice rose in disbelief. "Jenna helped her own brother kidnap a child?" "The journal suggests she regretted it almost immediately," Haas said. "Meacham writes about her hysterics when she realized what they'd done, how she threatened to turn them both in. But he convinced her to stay quiet, told her they'd both go to prison if she talked." "What about Cassidy? What did he do to her?" Marie's question hung in the air, heavy with dread. Haas chose her words carefully. "From what we can tell, he didn't physically harm her. The journal describes bringing her food, reading her stories, teaching her things. He seems to have convinced himself he was saving her from what he perceived as neglect." "Neglect?" Marie stood up, knocking over her coffee cup. "I loved my daughter more than anything in this world. I worked 2 jobs to support her after her father left. I chose that daycare because it had the best reputation in town. How dare he—" "Marie," Haas interrupted gently. "I know. Everyone knows what a devoted mother you are. Meacham's perception was warped by his obsession. Nothing in his journal reflects reality." Dawson returned, his face grim. "Florida State Police found Meacham's last known address, a condo in Naples, but he's not there. According to neighbors, he left about a year ago. Said he was moving to Costa Rica with his daughter." "Costa Rica," Marie repeated, trying to process this new information. "With his daughter? You think he took Cassidy out of the country?" "It's looking that way," Dawson confirmed. "We're contacting Interpol and the FBI. This just became an international investigation." "And Jenna?" Marie demanded. "What about her?" "She's as guilty as he is." "We're sending officers to her last known address in Arizona now," Haas said. "But something tells me we won't find her there either." Marie sank back into her chair, the reality of the situation crashing over her. After 7 years of uncertainty, she finally knew what had happened to her daughter. But Cassidy was still beyond her reach, possibly in another country, being raised by the man who had stolen her. "If she's alive," Marie said, her voice steadier than she felt, "then I'll find her. No matter how long it takes or how far I have to go, I'll find my daughter." The search for Harold Meacham and Cassidy Pearson made international headlines. The story of a child hidden in plain sight for nearly 2 years, then taken abroad by her captor, captured the world's attention. Marie's bakery became a makeshift headquarters as tips poured in from around the globe, possible sightings in Costa Rica, Panama, even as far as Brazil and Argentina. 3 weeks after the discovery of the blanket, Marie sat at a table in Sweetness Bakery, sorting through the latest batch of emails forwarded by Detective Haas. Most would lead nowhere, she knew, well-meaning people who thought they'd glimpsed a blonde girl who might be Cassidy, now 10 years old according to the age progression photos circulating online. The bell above the door chimed, and Marie looked up to see Detective Dawson enter, accompanied by a woman in a dark suit she didn't recognize. "Marie," Dawson said, his expression carefully neutral. "This is Special Agent Rebecca Chen from the FBI's International Operations Division. She's been coordinating with Costa Rican authorities on Cassidy's case." Marie stood, wiping flour from her hands. "Have you found something?" Agent Chen stepped forward. "Ms. Pearson, Costa Rican police have located a property in Tamarindo that was rented under the name Harold Manning. We believe that's the alias Meacham has been using. According to neighbors, a man matching Meacham's description lived there with a young girl until approximately 3 months ago." "Where did they go?" Marie asked, her heart racing. "That's what we're trying to determine," Chen replied. "But in searching the property, authorities found school records for a girl named Cassandra Manning. The birth date listed is the same as Cassidy's, just with the year changed to make her appear younger." Marie's knees weakened, and she gripped the table for support. "So she is alive. My daughter is alive." "It appears so," Chen confirmed. "And there's more. The landlord said Meacham left abruptly after receiving a phone call one night. He mentioned family troubles and said they needed to return to the States immediately. We're checking all points of entry, but with false documentation, they could have come in anywhere." "You think they're back in the U.S.?" Marie asked, hope and fear warring within her. "It's possible," Dawson said. "And if they are, we might know where. Jenna Meacham was found yesterday at a hospital in Phoenix. Apparent suicide attempt. She's in critical condition, but before she lost consciousness, she told the responding officers that Harold took Cassidy home. We think she might have meant their childhood home in northern Michigan." Marie grabbed her coat. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go to Michigan." "It's not that simple," Chen cautioned. "We have teams en route to the property now, but we need to proceed carefully. If Meacham realizes he's been found, there's no telling what he might do." "She's my daughter," Marie said, her voice breaking. "I've been waiting 7 years to hold her again. I'm going to Michigan, with or without you." Chen and Dawson exchanged glances. "We can arrange for you to be nearby," Chen finally conceded, "but you'll need to stay with a protective detail and follow all instructions. Cassidy's safety has to be our primary concern." 24 hours later, Marie found herself in a small motel room in Traverse City, Michigan, pacing the floor as she waited for updates. The FBI had located the Meacham family's old lake house about 30 miles outside the city and had set up surveillance. Thermal imaging had confirmed 2 people inside, 1 adult-sized heat signature and 1 child-sized. Marie's phone rang, startling her. it was Dawson. "We've confirmed it's them," he said without preamble. Facial recognition from long-range photography is a match for both Meacham and Cassidy. They appear to be preparing to leave. There are packed bags visible through the windows. "Are you going in?" Marie asked, her heart in her throat. "Yes, within the hour. The tactical team is in position. Marie, I need you to stay put no matter what happens. Agent Chen will come for you when it's safe." How does she look?" Marie couldn't stop herself from asking. Dawson's voice softened. "From what we can see, she appears healthy. Her hair is darker now, light brown instead of blonde, but the age progression photos were pretty accurate. She looks like you, Marie." Tears spilled down Marie's cheeks. "Please keep her safe. That's all that matters." "I promise," Dawson said, then ended the call. The next 90 minutes were the longest of Marie's life, surpassing even the first terrible night of Cassidy's disappearance. She alternated between pacing, praying, and staring at her silent phone. When a knock finally came at the door, she nearly collapsed with relief. Agent Chen stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Pearson, we have her. Cassidy is safe." Marie's legs gave out, and Chen caught her before she could fall. "Meacham?" "In custody." He surrendered without resistance once he realized he was surrounded. "Apparently he's been telling Cassidy for years that you died in a car accident shortly after she was taken. He's been positioning himself as her savior, her protector." Marie's heart broke anew at this fresh cruelty. "Does she know that I'm alive? That I've been looking for her all this time?" Chen nodded. Detective Dawson explained the situation to her as gently as possible. "She's confused, understandably. It's going to take time for her to process everything. She's been living as Cassandra Manning for 7 years now. That identity is real to her." "I understand," Marie said, though her heart ached at the thought. "Where is she now? Can I see her?" "She's at the local hospital being examined. Standard procedure in these cases. Physically, she appears to be in good health, but we need to assess her psychological state as well. And yes, as soon as the doctors clear it, you can see her." The drive to Munson Medical Center passed in a blur. Marie sat in the back seat of Agent Chen's SUV, rehearsing what she would say to the daughter who had been stolen from her, the little girl who was now nearly a young woman and who believed her mother was dead. At the hospital, they were led to a small waiting area outside the pediatric ward. Through the window in the door, Marie could see a girl sitting on an examination table, talking to a female doctor. Her light brown hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore jeans and a blue sweater. Even from a distance, even with the changes time had wrought, Marie recognized her daughter instantly. "Cassidy," she whispered, her hand pressed against the glass. Detective Dawson approached from down the hall. "The doctor says she's physically healthy, no signs of abuse. Meacham appears to have taken good care of her, at least in that regard. She's well educated too, he homeschooled her, and she's actually ahead of grade level in most subjects." "But he stole her life," Marie said, unable to tear her eyes away from her daughter. "He stole our life together." "I know," Dawson said quietly. "And he'll pay for that. He's looking at multiple felony charges: kidnapping, false imprisonment, identity fraud, international flight to avoid prosecution. He'll never be free again." The doctor emerged from the examination room, her expression compassionate. "Ms. Pearson, I'm Dr. Reynolds. Cassidy is ready to see you now. We've explained who you are and why you're here, but please understand that this is incredibly overwhelming for her. Take it slowly." Marie nodded, her throat too tight for words. With trembling legs, she walked into the room where her daughter waited. Cassidy, her Cassidy, sat perched on the edge of the examination table, her blue eyes, so like her father's, wide and wary. She looked both familiar and strange, the baby fat of toddlerhood replaced by the leaner features of preadolescence. There was a small scar above her right eyebrow that hadn't been there before, and her once wild curls had relaxed into gentle waves. "Hello, Cassidy," Marie said softly, stopping a few feet away, giving her daughter space. I'm your mom." Cassidy stared at her, her expression a complex mixture of confusion, fear, and something that might have been hope. "He told me you died," she said finally, her voice higher than Marie had imagined it would be. "In a car crash. He said that's why he had to take me, to protect me." Marie fought to keep her composure. "That wasn't true. I've been looking for you every day since you disappeared. I never stopped looking." Cassidy's eyes filled with tears. "I don't remember you. I try, but I can't remember anything from before. Just feelings sometimes, and dreams." "That's okay," Marie assured her, though each word was a knife to her heart. "You were very young, but I remember everything about you. I remember how you loved butterflies and the color purple, how you insisted on wearing rain boots even on sunny days, how you could sing the entire Frozen soundtrack before you could properly pronounce your R's." A flicker of recognition crossed Cassidy's face. "I still like Frozen," she admitted quietly. Harold, he said it was childish, but I would watch it when he was out." Marie took a careful step closer. "You had a blanket, too, white with purple stars. You carried it everywhere." Cassidy's eyes widened. "I remember a blanket, in my dreams sometimes. It made me feel safe." "Your grandmother made it for you," Marie said, her voice breaking. "My mother? She loved you so much." Cassidy hesitated, then asked in a small voice, Can I see a picture?" "Of before, I mean. Of us together." Marie nodded, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. She'd prepared for this, had uploaded her favorite photos of Cassidy to a special album. She passed the phone to her daughter, who took it with visible trepidation. For several minutes, Cassidy scrolled through the images. Baby Cassidy on a blanket in the park, toddler Cassidy smeared with birthday cake, 3-year-old Cassidy in butterfly pajamas, cuddling her blanket as Marie read her a bedtime story. "That's me," she whispered, touching the screen. "And that's you. We look happy." "We were," Marie confirmed, wiping tears from her cheeks. "So happy. And we can be happy again, Cassidy. It will take time, and it won't always be easy, but we can find our way back to each other." Cassidy looked up from the phone, her blue eyes shimmering with tears. "I don't know what to call you. He told me to call him Dad, but—" "You can call me Marie for now, if that's easier," Marie offered, though it broke her heart a little to say it. "We'll figure everything out one day at a time." Cassidy nodded, then held out the phone. As Marie reached for it, their fingers brushed, and neither pulled away. For one breathless moment, they stayed connected by that small point of contact, mother and daughter separated by 7 years of lies, but finally, miraculously, together again. "Can I—" Cassidy began hesitantly. "Can I have my blanket back?" "The doctors said you found it." Marie smiled through her tears. "Of course you can. It's yours. It's always been yours." And in that moment, surrounded by the sterile walls of a hospital examination room with the ghost of their lost years hanging between them, something fragile and precious began to take root, the first tentative strands of a bond that had been severed but never truly broken. The road ahead would be long and often painful, but Marie Pearson had found her daughter. After 7 years of searching, that miracle was enough for now. The trial of Harold Meacham dominated headlines for months. The details that emerged painted a disturbing picture of obsession and manipulation. Jenna Meacham, who survived her suicide attempt, testified against her brother in exchange for a reduced sentence, describing how he had meticulously planned the abduction, taking advantage of her position at the daycare and her own vulnerable mental state following a difficult divorce. Most shocking to the residents of Millfield was the evidence that Meacham had remained in the area for nearly 2 years after the kidnapping, keeping Cassidy hidden in the secret room while life continued around them. Neighbors recalled occasionally seeing Meacham with a young girl at odd hours, grocery shopping late at night or hiking in remote areas, but he had explained her away as his niece visiting from out of town. The psychological evaluation of Cassidy, now legally returned to her birth name, though she still sometimes responded to Cassandra, revealed the extent of Meacham's manipulation. He had constructed an elaborate fiction about her past, telling her that her mother had died and that unnamed bad people were looking for them, which necessitated their frequent moves and the use of false identities. Despite this, the therapists found that Cassidy was remarkably resilient, with a strong sense of self that had survived years of isolation and lies. For Marie, each day brought new challenges and small victories. Cassidy had returned to Millfield with her, moving into the small house Marie had purchased 3 years after her disappearance. A house with a bedroom painted purple and white, waiting for a daughter who might never come home. The adjustment was difficult for both of them. Cassidy struggled with nightmares and anxiety, while Marie had to learn how to parent a 10-year-old she had last known as a toddler. But there were moments of connection, too. The first time Cassidy laughed at one of Marie's terrible jokes. The afternoon they baked cookies together in the bakery after hours, flour dusting their hair. The night Cassidy hesitantly asked if she could sleep with her bedroom door open, and Marie sat in the hallway until she fell asleep, the restored blanket clutched in her arms. 6 months after Cassidy's return, Marie closed the bakery early to attend her daughter's first therapy session with a new counselor who specialized in reunification cases. As they walked through town, Cassidy's hand occasionally brushing against hers, but not quite ready to hold it, Marie reflected on how far they had come and how far they still had to go. "Marie?" Cassidy asked, using the name she still felt most comfortable with. "Do you think I'll ever remember? From before, I mean. Real memories, not just the things you've told me or the pictures I've seen." Marie considered the question carefully. "I don't know, sweetie. You were very young when you were taken, but I think the important thing isn't what you remember. It's what we create together now. New memories?" Cassidy nodded thoughtfully. "Like the blanket." "What do you mean?" "I didn't remember the blanket, not really, but when I saw it again, when I touched it, it felt right, like it was always mine, like it was waiting for me." She glanced up at Marie, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Kinda like you." Marie blinked back tears, touched by Cassidy's insight. "That's exactly right. I was always waiting for you, just like your blanket." They walked a few more steps in comfortable silence before Cassidy spoke again. "I remembered something else yesterday. I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure if it was real or just something I made up." Marie's pulse quickened. "You can tell me anything, real or not." Cassidy kicked at a pebble on the sidewalk, her eyes downcast. "I remember someone singing a lullaby about stars. I used to hear it in my dreams sometimes, even when I was with him." She still struggled to refer to Meacham directly. "I thought maybe it was from a movie or something, but yesterday I heard you humming in the kitchen, and it was the same song." Marie stopped walking, overwhelmed by emotion. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." Her voice was barely a whisper. "It was your favorite. I sang it every night when I tucked you in. You wouldn't sleep without it." Cassidy looked up, her blue eyes searching Marie's face. "So it was real? It was you?" "It was me," Marie confirmed, her voice breaking slightly. "Every night until you were taken, and many nights after, I sang that song and prayed you could somehow hear it." Cassidy didn't respond immediately. Instead, she tentatively reached out and took Marie's hand, her small fingers wrapping around her mother's for the first time since her return. The simple gesture held more meaning than any words could convey. They continued toward the therapist's office, hand in hand, both aware that something significant had shifted between them. The road ahead would still be challenging, but for the first time, Marie truly believed they would find their way back to each other. The following spring marked the one-year anniversary of Cassidy's return to Mill Field. The town, once scarred by her disappearance, had rallied around the reunited family with a protective ferocity that touched Marie deeply. Teachers at the local school made accommodations for Cassidy's unusual educational background. Neighbors respected their privacy while still offering support, and customers at Sweetness Bakery pretended not to notice when Cassidy occasionally helped behind the counter, her tentative smile growing more confident with each passing month. Detective Dawson had retired officially, but he still stopped by the bakery every Thursday for coffee and to check on his girls, as he called them. He had become something of an honorary grandfather to Cassidy, patiently answering her questions about the investigation and her rescue without glossing over the truth, but framing it in terms she could process. Harold Meacham had been sentenced to 30 years without parole for kidnapping and related charges. Jenna Meacham received 5 years with the possibility of early release, a sentence that some in town felt was too lenient, but that Marie had supported. Jenna's testimony had been crucial in securing her brother's conviction, and the psychological evaluation had revealed the extent to which Harold had manipulated and coerced his sister, exploiting her history of mental health issues and dependency. On this particular April morning, Marie watched from the kitchen as Cassidy sat at the dining room table working on a school project, a family tree assignment that had initially caused concern for both mother and therapist. But Cassidy had approached it with characteristic thoughtfulness, creating a tree with branches for both her biological family and the complicated relationships she had formed during her captivity. "Marie?" Cassidy called, not looking up from her work. Though she occasionally tested out Mom in private moments, she still predominantly used Marie's name. "Can I ask you something about my dad? My real dad, I mean?" Marie carefully dried her hands on a dish towel before joining Cassidy at the table. "Of course. What would you like to know?" Cassidy studied the blank space on her family tree where her father's information should go. "Did he look for me too? When I was gone?" Marie hesitated, wanting to be honest without burdening her daughter with adult complexities. "Your father and I were already separated when you were born, and he moved away when you were very young. He wasn't really a part of our lives by the time you were taken." Cassidy nodded, absorbing this information. "So he doesn't know I'm back?" "He knows," Marie said quietly. "I called him when you were found. He lives in California now, with a new family. He has 2 other children, your half-siblings." "Does he want to see me?" The question was asked with a studied casualness that broke Marie's heart. "He said that would be up to you when you're ready," Marie replied carefully. "There's no rush to make that decision. You have enough to adjust to right now." Cassidy nodded again, returning to her project. After a moment she said, "I think I just want it to be us for now. Is that okay?" Marie reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand gently. "That's more than okay." They worked in companionable silence for a while, Cassidy drawing and Marie helping with spelling as needed. The normalcy of the moment, a mother and daughter working on homework together, felt both ordinary and miraculous. The doorbell rang, interrupting their work. Marie went to answer, surprised to find Daniel Reynolds on her porch, holding a small cardboard box. "Mr. Reynolds," Marie said, slightly confused. Though the man had been unfailingly kind and cooperative during the investigation, they hadn't had much contact since Cassidy's return. "This is unexpected." Reynolds shifted awkwardly, offering the box. "I'm sorry to intrude, Ms. Pearson. I've been doing more renovations on the house, and I found something else that I thought might belong to Cassidy. It was hidden in the basement, behind the water heater." Marie took the box cautiously, her mind immediately leaping to darker possibilities. "Have you looked inside?" Just enough to see that it wasn't, well, anything disturbing, Reynolds assured her. It looks like a time capsule or memory box of some kind. There are drawings, little crafts, things a child might make. Marie's throat tightened. Thank you for bringing this. It's very thoughtful. Reynolds nodded, already backing toward his car. Please let Cassidy know I'm rooting for her. The whole town is. After he left, Marie carried the box to the dining room, setting it on the table with care. Someone found something that might be yours, she explained to Cassidy, who was watching with curious eyes. We don't have to open it now if you don't want to. Cassidy reached for the box hesitantly. Is it from that time? Marie nodded, unsure whether the contents would trigger distress or provide some form of closure. With careful movements, Cassidy lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, were dozens of children's drawings, bright crayon depictions of houses, people, animals. Small craft projects made from popsicle sticks and pipe cleaners, a collection of painted rocks, and at the very bottom, a homemade book titled My Family in childish handwriting. Cassidy lifted the book with trembling fingers, opening to the first page. There, drawn in crayon, were two stick figures, one tall with brown hair, labeled Dad, and one small with yellow hair, labeled Me. The next page showed a house with a sun and flowers. The following pages contained more drawings of daily activities, eating meals, reading books, playing games. But it was the final page that caught Marie's attention. A different drawing, clearly made at a different time with different materials. This one showed three figures, the tall Dad, the small Me, and a new figure with long hair, labeled Mom in Heaven. Cassidy stared at the drawing, her expression unreadable. I made this, she said finally. I remember making this book. He told me to draw our family, and when I asked about my mom, he said you were watching from heaven. Her voice caught. I didn't want to forget you, even though I couldn't really remember you, so I drew you as an angel. Marie's heart broke anew at this evidence of her daughter's resilience and the depth of Meekham's deception. You found a way to keep me with you, she said softly, even when he tried to erase me. Cassidy ran her fingers over the drawing. I used to talk to you sometimes when I was alone. I'd tell you about my day or things I was learning. I thought maybe if you were an angel, you could hear me. Oh, sweetheart, Marie whispered, moving to kneel beside Cassidy's chair. I couldn't hear you, but I was talking to you too. Every night before bed, I'd tell you about my day and how much I missed you. I'd send you all my love, hoping somehow it would reach you. Cassidy looked from the drawing to Marie's face, her eyes filling with tears. Maybe it did, she said. Maybe that's why I never forgot you were my mom, even when he said you weren't. Even when I couldn't remember your face or your name, something inside me knew. The distance that had lingered between them, the careful space they had maintained out of respect for Cassidy's trauma and adjustment, suddenly collapsed. Cassidy leaned forward, wrapping her arms around Marie's neck in their first real hug since her return. Marie held her daughter close, feeling the small, strong heartbeat against her own. I remember you, Cassidy whispered against her shoulder. Not everything, not clearly, but I remember that you loved me. I remember that I was safe with you. Marie closed her eyes, savoring the weight of her daughter in her arms, the scent of her hair, the solidity of her presence. You still are, she promised. You always will be. Later that night, after Cassidy had gone to bed, the door open, the nightlight on, the blanket with purple stars tucked securely around her, Marie sat alone in the living room, the box of drawings open before her. She examined each one carefully, these precious artifacts from the lost years of her daughter's life. Though created in captivity, they showed a child who had maintained her creativity, her hope, and most importantly, her sense of self. The homemade book lay open to the final page, the three-figure family with Mom in Heaven watching over them. Marie traced the crayon figure with gentle fingers, this representation of herself that Cassidy had carried in her heart through years of lies and manipulation. In the face of everything Meacham had done to erase Marie from Cassidy's life, this simple drawing stood as evidence of his failure. He had taken Cassidy's freedom, her childhood, her sense of security, but he had never fully taken her mother from her. Some bonds, Marie realized, were simply too strong to break, too fundamental to be forgotten. She carefully closed the book and returned it to the box, knowing that one day, when Cassidy was older and the wounds less raw, these drawings would help her daughter understand her own story more fully. For now they were a bridge between the lost years and the present, between the toddler who had vanished from a daycare playground and the remarkable young girl who was finding her way home. Marie rose and moved quietly to Cassidy's doorway, watching the gentle rise and fall of her daughter's chest as she slept. The blanket with purple stars was clutched in one hand, much as it had been in that last photo taken on the morning of her disappearance. Some things, it seemed, remained constant even when everything else changed. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," Marie sang softly, the familiar lullaby flowing as naturally as breathing. "How I wonder what you are." In her sleep, Cassidy smiled. The discovery of Cassidy Pearson and the subsequent trial of Harold Meacham became a case study in law enforcement circles, particularly in the handling of long-term missing children cases. The FBI's International Recovery Unit used the lessons learned to develop new protocols for reintegrating recovered children into families after prolonged separations. For the residents of Millfield, the case forced a reckoning with uncomfortable truths about trust and vigilance. The daycare center where Cassidy had been abducted closed permanently, unable to overcome the stigma of what had happened on their watch. Parents became more cautious, more aware of who had access to their children and under what circumstances. But amid these darker lessons emerged a powerful story of resilience and hope. Cassidy's recovery and gradual reintegration into her mother's life became a testament to the human capacity to heal, to adapt, and to find meaning even after profound trauma. 2 years after her return, Cassidy, now 12 and in 7th grade, stood before the Millfield Town Council, Marie seated proudly in the front row as her daughter addressed the assembled officials. "I'm here to ask for your support for the Cassidy Project," the girl began, her voice clear and confident despite her nervousness. "When I came back to Millfield, I had to relearn how to be part of a family, how to trust people, how to feel safe again. My mom and I were lucky to have help, therapists who understood what we were going through, police officers who followed every lead, and a community that never forgot me." She paused, glancing at Marie for reassurance before continuing. But not every recovered child has those resources. The Cassidy Project would create a support network for families who are reunited after abductions or other separations. It would provide counseling, educational assistance, and community integration services. Because coming home isn't the end of the story, it's just the beginning of a new chapter. The council voted unanimously to fund the pilot program, with Detective Dawson, now officially retired, volunteering to serve as the law enforcement liaison. What had begun as one family's tragedy evolved into a source of healing for others facing similar challenges across the country. For Marie, watching her daughter speak with such poise and purpose felt like witnessing a miracle. There were still difficult days, nightmares that left Cassidy shaking and fearful, moments when a random trigger would cause her to withdraw into herself, the ongoing therapy sessions that sometimes left them both emotionally drained. But there were wonderful days too, increasingly frequent, when they moved through life as mother and daughter, their bond strengthening with each shared experience. On the 7th anniversary of Cassidy's return, 14 years after her abduction, Marie closed the bakery early for their now traditional private celebration. They drove to the lake outside town, a place that held no memories for either of them, good or bad, neutral territory they had claimed as their own. As they walked along the shore, Cassidy, now 15 and nearly as tall as her mother, picked up flat stones to skip across the water's surface. The blanket with purple stars, now carefully preserved in a shadow box on her bedroom wall, had been replaced by other symbols of security and connection. A mother-daughter necklace Marie had given her for her 13th birthday, the tradition of Saturday morning baking sessions, the lullaby they still shared on difficult nights. "I saw Jenna yesterday," Cassidy said casually, sending a stone bouncing 4 times before it sank. Jenna Meacham had been released 3 years earlier and had returned to Millfield against most people's expectations, moving into a small apartment and taking a job at the local library. Her presence in town had initially caused tension, but Marie had made the difficult choice to allow supervised contact between Jenna and Cassidy, guided by their therapist's recommendations. "How was that?" Marie asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. These occasional meetings were still challenging for her to accept, though she understood their importance to Cassidy's healing process. "Good, I think," Cassidy replied thoughtfully. "She showed me pictures of herself and Harold when they were kids. Their dad was pretty awful to them, especially Harold. Not that it excuses anything," she added quickly. "But it helps me understand, I guess, how people become who they are." Marie nodded, marveling at her daughter's capacity for nuanced understanding. "Understanding doesn't mean forgiving," she said gently. "You're allowed to feel however you feel about both of them." "I know." Cassidy skipped another stone. "I don't think I'll ever forgive Harold, but with Jenna, I'm not there yet, but maybe someday." She turned to face her mother, her expression serious. "Is that okay with you? That I might forgive her someday?" Marie took a deep breath, considering the question honestly. "It's more than okay. It's brave. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's about freeing yourself from carrying the weight of it forever. If you can find that freedom, I want that for you." Cassidy smiled, a full, unguarded smile that still took Marie's breath away when she saw it. "You know what's weird? When I think about my life, it's like there are 2 different versions of me. The little girl in the pictures who lived with you and the girl who grew up with him. For a long time, they felt like completely separate people. But lately, I've started to feel like maybe they're both just parts of who I am now." "And who is that?" Marie asked softly. "Who are you now, Cassidy?" The teenager looked out over the lake, considering the question. "I'm still figuring that out, but I know I'm your daughter." She turned back to Marie with a shy smile. "And I think I'm ready to call you Mom, if that's still okay." Marie's heart soared. "It's always been okay. It's all I've ever wanted to hear." "Okay then, Mom." Cassidy tested the word, and finding it fit, said it again, more confidently. "Mom?" Marie pulled her daughter into a hug, marveling at how their story had unfolded. The unimaginable loss, the miraculous recovery, and now this gradual, precious healing. The blanket discovered in a stranger's attic had led them here, to this moment of connection that had seemed impossible 7 years ago. As they walked back to the car, arm in arm against the cooling evening air, Marie reflected on the strange, terrible, wonderful journey that had brought them to this point. The town of Millfield had been forever changed by what happened to Cassidy Pearson, but so had countless other communities touched by her story and the work of the Cassidy Project. Out of one family's tragedy had come purpose, healing, and hope for others walking similar paths. "What are you thinking about?" Cassidy asked, noticing her mother's contemplative expression. Marie smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. "I'm thinking about stars." Cassidy laughed, the sound carrying across the still water. "Twinkle, twinkle?" "Something like that," Marie replied. "I'm thinking about how stars guide people home even after the longest, darkest journeys, and how sometimes, when you wish on them hard enough and long enough, those wishes actually come true." Cassidy leaned her head against her mother's shoulder as they walked, two figures silhouetted against the setting sun, their shadows stretching behind them. Connected, unbroken, and finally, after 14 years of separation and 7 years of healing, whole.